Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here, and this video is going to be the second part of the video that I posted the other day showing the pattern of lies and misdirection that Bethesda likes to show in their marketing speak when they're trying to placate the fan base. So this is going to be the second half of that same video, and this one is going to be mainly focused on an interview that Todd Howard did with Ted Price, who is in charge over at Insomniac Games. And he did an interview on the Game Maker's Notebook podcast, and you can go back and listen to all of that and double check everything that I'm saying here. And that's where most of the relevant points from this video are going to come from. First episode focused mainly on some lies from Pete, and this one's going to focus on Todd mainly. And fun fact, at the end of the episode, there's a new bonus lie that I added because they keep lying. Okay, so hope you enjoy this second half. I will talk to you guys on the other side. And it's funny how they admitted that in 2012 when they weren't making, or at least weren't talking about making, an online game. But now that they are, well, the tune has shifted just a little bit. And now, we just need to trust Bethesda because they're going to make a game unlike anything else we've ever seen. These issues that he brought up about MMOs, surely none of these will affect Fallout 76. Weapon balancing, I'm sure, will have no issue in a PvP type of game. But it's PvP mainly, coach. Well, that's what they keep saying, but there's also going to be PvP, which means you do have to worry about weapon balancing, which is something that they aren't talking about. Because if you've ever played an online game like this, weapon balancing is a major issue. And they have not said word one. By the way, guys, once again, we are inside 4 months from launch. So they don't have a whole lot of time to come up with what they're going to do. And then I saw a quote from Todd from 2017 where he talks about how he wants to improve the storytelling in Bethesda's open world games. And if you go back a few months ago and you read some comment threads and some forums from, before the Fallout 76 hubbub, what you see is a lot of people talking about how they wish that they would improve the engine of the game. They wish that they would improve the writing and improve the quests and stuff like that. And Todd here in 2017 placating the fans, saying yes, they're working on how to do better open world writing, how to have better quests in their open world. And then when you look at what Fallout 76 is actually going to offer, it kind of makes quotes like, how do we tell a better story in an open world? Well, Todd, it almost seems like guys don't really care about telling a story in an open world, because you're just spitting us out of the vault in Fallout 76 and telling us to go build, and there's no human NPCs, there's no towns, there's no real structure to the game. We're just supposed to make our own story. So apparently what you said last year about wanting to improve the storytelling was a complete lie, because you're not trying to improve the storytelling and you're not trying to improve the quest. And that brings me to the meat of this interview that I listened to, which once again is from the Game Maker's Notebook podcast, and you can look this up with Todd Howard. It's over an hour long. Feel free to listen to it, and you can hear these quotes that I'm going to be talking about right now. So when Todd talks about storytelling in his games, it's very interesting, because when he starts talking about quest writing and NPC quest giving in his games, he starts talking to the interviewer, and the interviewer is Ted Price from Insomniac Games, who's making the upcoming Spider-Man game. So it's a guy who knows the industry. And the interviewer asked him about NPCs, and Todd says he goes into this long talk about how when the writers at Bethesda are struggling to come up with a reason of why the player character needs to do a quest and why the NPC can't do it, Todd literally laughs. You can listen to the interview. He laughs. Says, why would you even think of that? Just give him the quest. Why would you even think of that? And the guy from Insomniac Games, Ted Price, says, well, if I was writing it, I would want to give a backstory. And Todd laughs in his face and says, well, why? He's like, that's what the writers do. Why would you do that? He laughs in his face. Todd doesn't care about making sure the quest makes sense. So everyone who's like, I hope they learn from The Witcher 3 for their next game, well, Todd doesn't care. This interview is from 2018. Before we knew about Fallout 76. That's where this interview came from, where he comes right out and says he specifically tells his writers to not put it in there. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing with the lore for Fallout 76. And I know a lot of people don't necessarily care about lore, but a lot of people do. I know a certain lore channel that has almost 1 million subscribers for Fallout. So some people do care about the lore. And Todd, again, in this interview, says that he makes it clear that he doesn't really care about the lore, because he says when people come up to him and talk about the lore, he doesn't know what they're talking about half the time. And this is the guy who says that he has lived and breathed Elder Scrolls and Fallout for decades now. He talks about how he lives and breathes it, but yet these fans seem to know way more about his games than he does. But that's just totally fine. And then he talks about how Fallout 76, and this is something you can look at in the No Clip documentary about the making of Fallout 76. It's basically, Fallout 76 is not this huge money investment that they're using, because they're taking the carcass of Fallout 4 and putting multiplayer into that, and Battlecry Studios is working on that. And it's interesting because, once again, when they're talking about Fallout 76, they're talking about how they're going to have Battlecry Studios, which is their new Austin studio. They're going to handle it, and it's just going to be fine. But that's really interesting, because I dug up another quote from 2015 when Battlecry the game was canceled by Bethesda, and they said, "We have concerns about the Battlecry game and whether it is meeting the objectives we have for it." And then they canceled it shortly thereafter. But that's the studio that we're supposed to trust for Fallout 76. And I just find all this very, very interesting, because they're using the same system as Fallout 4, which had a lot of bugs and a lot of people had game crashes, and now they're giving it to a studio where they've already canceled their first game and said they had concerns about how it was coming along, they weren't hitting objectives, things weren't working right, and they canceled the game. But Fallout 76 is using the same system, and Todd goes over that again in this interview. And then Todd talks about, I'm sure maybe last week you saw a couple videos, a couple articles about how there's not going to be cars or vehicles or mounts in the game. And Todd talks about why they're not going to have stuff in those games, and why in general they don't have mounts in their games. And when they do, they don't focus on them. Like, you don't need a mount to play the game. And the reason why, he comes right out and say it, they don't do it well. It's not something they're good at. So instead of improving their own output, instead of hiring people who can make horse or mount or car mechanics in their game, they just say, no, screw it. It's in the interview. Go ahead, listen. He doesn't say screw it, but he in so many words, he says, oh, we're bad at it, so we're not gonna bother. That's why we don't have mounts. So this big map we're gonna get in Fallout 4, which is 4 times bigger than Fallout 76, sorry, it's gonna be 4 times bigger than Fallout 4. Well, that's just, why would you want a mount for that? Because Todd's team can't do it. So you see, they're not going to put in the extra effort. Just like they're not going to put in the extra effort to write quests. It's going to be radiant, typical Bethesda. Remember the Thieves Guild from Skyrim? And those radiant quests, some of the most inane questing I've ever been asked to do in any game. That's what I see for Fallout 76 and their quest. And if you go through this interview, it is staggering how again and again he basically says, yes, we do less effort here, we're doing less effort here, this is less effort. And he laughs in the guy's face when the guy suggests that he would want to write a backstory for a quest giver. He laughs in the guy's face. So everyone who thinks that Bethesda's going to step it up with Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 for the writing in those games, go for it. Because Todd Howard doesn't care. And P. Hines doesn't care about the lore. I'm sure a lot of you have heard the infamous quote about the kid in the fridge and about those tweets. You can go and look those up. They're everywhere. And Pete Hines doesn't care about the lore. Even though he says it's important, they don't care. And they've retrofitted the lore for Fallout 76. They've already said to try to get certain enemies and certain items into the game. So if you are someone who's a lore fan, they don't care. They're certainly not going to put in the effort. Todd says in the interview, just change it. Doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. And now I want to get something that's also pretty meaty that a lot of you guys are interested in, and that's called mods. And a lot of people saying, don't worry, we got mods, we got mods, we got mods. When Fallout 76 has mods, we're going to go with it. Well, during the E3 presentation, Todd puts a lot of lip service towards mods. But if you listen to this interview, he said something very interesting that leads me to believe that they actually don't really care about mods. So if you're a modder, and you've been listening to them try to placate you for years about mods, and they care, and Creation Club isn't paid mods, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's very interesting because Todd says that mods for their games are much talked about, but not much utilized. Very similar to the language that Sony uses and such about, backwards compatibility and why they don't offer it. It's because people talk about it a lot, but they don't use it. And Todd's using the same language here. He says only 6 to 7% of the player base even bothers with mods. So 93% of the people don't even touch mods. And so when he talks about how important it is to Bethesda, do you really think that it's important to Bethesda? When the numbers he's spitting out in a 2018 interview says that when they look at the numbers, hardly anyone uses mods. So do you think they're actually taking it seriously? Because they're not going to have mods at launch. They said they're going to have them sometime later. If you go back and look at the mod implementation for Fallout 4, some people didn't get them for a year. So the game you're buying in November of this year isn't going to have mods. And based on the language that Todd uses in this interview, seems like it's really not a priority. Certainly not the priority that they want to lead you to believe when he's on stage at E3 with his mic on his face making his little jokes. Now I want to get to the end of this interview. And once again, if you guys want to look this up, I'm going to tell you once again, Game Maker's Notebook, it's a podcast. You can look all this up. And if you're wondering where this interview came from, this is the one where you probably saw in the spring a lot of headlines. Let me read you some of the headlines that were at the top of this interview. Because this is the one where they talk, Todd Howard won't even tell his son anything about Elder Scrolls 6. Isn't that crazy? Here's another one. Todd Howard's son asked his father what Elder Scrolls 6 is about. Guess what happened? Elder Scrolls director Todd Howard refuses to talk to his son about Elder Scrolls 6. And on and on. Elder Scrolls 6 is so secret that Todd Howard won't even throw his son a bone. Oh! Even Todd Howard's son doesn't know what's happening next with the Elder Scrolls. These are all the headlines you saw. These are all the headlines. About Todd won't tell his son about Elder Scrolls. That's a fun little tidbit of information. But that's what all the headlines were. That's all people talked about from this interview. Didn't talk about how Todd says that they're putting in less effort to the quest and how they don't want to do this. And there's a lot more stuff in here. But at the end of the interview, he started talking about different games that he plays, different games that Todd Howard plays. And this is something that I found very interesting. So let's get into this real quick. So first he started lamenting the fact that there's no longer a game called NCAA football and how he really used to like playing this back in the day. And he says that now, when college football season rolls around, he says, quote, he deeply misses the game and the fact that he can't play it. So this shows me, okay, so Todd does understand what happens when a game that he likes is ripped away and he can't play it. He says he deeply misses the game. And I said, wow, that's interesting. So he understands that emotion of when a developer decides to... Now, NCAA football is gone. It's dead. They aren't making it anymore. But that's not what I took away from that. What I took away is the fact that he understands what it's like when a company decides to stop making the thing that he likes. And it hurt him. But he doesn't want to face the fact that a lot of people are also going to deeply miss the Fallout experience that we want. And we're going to have to go years upon years upon years before we get this game. But that is not what I really want to get to, because now he talks about the games that he's currently playing. And this, to me, was very eye-opening, because this shows me what sort of implementation and what sort of game design and monetization he's been playing and what he's been looking at. And listen to these two games. He talks about how he's been playing a lot of Madden Ultimate Team. Now, if you don't know about Madden Ultimate Team, it was reported that that game made $830 million last year, combined with Madden and FIFA, just from Ultimate Team. Almost $1 billion last year from Ultimate Team, and that is a mode. Todd says specifically, Ultimate Team mode is, quote, phenomenally well made. And that's a game that he plays a lot, Madden. Ultimate Team specifically, with that horrible Ultimate Team money-making practice that EA continues to get away with in their sports games. That's what Todd's been playing. And what's the other game that he's been playing? Well, it's a little card game called Hearthstone, which maybe you've heard of it. It costs a fortune if you want to keep up with that game. I read an article that says that if you want to keep current in that game, it can cost you up to $400 per year just to stay current in that game. And Todd said that's a game that he plays more than any other game is Hearthstone. And so these are games that are heavily monetized that he's been playing, that he says he puts the most time into. Madden Ultimate Team and Hearthstone. And if you think that he isn't sitting there being like, how can I use these techniques in my games? He talks about how he doesn't want to have games just going off using timers, and he doesn't want to do this, doesn't want to do that. But the games he's playing, the games that he is being influenced by, are two of the least consumer-friendly games on the market today. Ultimate Team from EA. Horribly horrible for the consumers. Hearthstone. For years I've been hearing about the monetization and how they just suck wallets dry. Like I said, the article I said from last year said if you want to keep up currently, it's going to cost you $400 per year to keep up with a card game. And that's what Todd enjoys playing. So you take that for what it is. Like I said, I threw a lot of stuff at you. This is a very long video, and I understand that. And probably a lot of people didn't get this far. If you did, thank you so much for listening. But if you listen to all that, and you listen to the quotes I gave you at the beginning, and you listen to this quotes and whatnot that I gave you from this interview, and if you don't see the direction of Bethesda is spiraling down the toilet, I mean, I don't know. This is just stuff I found from digging. I kept finding new information. The further and further I went, I kept finding stuff. I probably could do another 30 minutes on this if I did a little bit more research. This is just some stuff I found on the surface. So feel free to, like I said, check all this stuff out. A lot of it's from gamesindustry.biz, over the years, different articles, and then the Game Maker's Notebook. Go ahead and listen to it yourself. I've listened to it a couple of times, and I thought these were some interesting takeaways. Now, maybe you think all this is just crazy speculation. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you agree with me, and you're like, wow, this is some interesting information, because I thought it was quite interesting. Maybe you don't care either way. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'm going to cut this video off. Finally, I can't believe I just did a video this long. Like I said, if anyone is still listening to it, thank you. I hope I've given you guys some stuff to think about. And maybe some of you, even one person, if I got them to think, maybe I shouldn't be blindly trusting everything Bethesda says. Well then, that's all this video is for. I'm trying to get people to figure out that you can't just sit there and look at Uncle Pete and Todd Howard and listen to everything that they say and think that it's gospel, because it's not. So that's all I got for today. I'll talk to you guys later. I'm Coach Toolshed, and as always, keep it turned to 11. Hey everyone, as promised, I am back with a quick bonus live from Bethesda, and this one's going to come from Todd Howard, and this is where he directly contradicts himself. And if you go back and watch the E3 presentation for Fallout 76, he calls it softcore survival. Says that's what the game is going to be. He says right there during the E3 interview, if you want to go back and watch the whole thing, you're going to have to dig it out. But he says it's softcore survival. That's what he said on stage. Now, recently, an article comes out where he's quoted as saying, quote, "We avoid the word survival because people's minds immediately go to DayZ and Rust and certain other games, and those comparisons are not really accurate for what we're doing. Okay. We avoid the word survival. But on stage, he used the word survival. But so, once again, we can't believe anything they say. And if you're still believing what they say, I don't know what to tell you. They changed this is him changing his own tune within a month's time. That's all. Okay, Coach Toolshed signing out. Keep it turned to 11.